Good morning, everyone. Somebody in this room, somebody listening to me right now, you've been running from purpose, running from pain, running from the very thing God placed in you before you were even formed in your mother's womb. But I came to tell you today, God is calling you. Pause. Not your neighbor, not your friend, not the person you think is more qualified. God is calling you. Voice rises, passionate, rhythmic. See, when God calls, he doesn't check your resume. He checks your heart. He doesn't call the perfect. He perfects the called. He doesn't wait for you to get it all together. He steps into your mess and says, this is where my glory will shine. You thought your mistakes disqualified you, but your mistakes are the very material God uses to write his message. You thought your pain was punishment, but your pain was preparation. You thought the storm was sent to destroy you, but the storm was sent to develop you. Tone softens, intimate and personal. Sometimes God's call doesn't sound like a trumpet. Sometimes it sounds like a whisper in the middle of the night, a stirring in your spirit that won't let you sleep, a gentle tug on your soul that says there's more in you than what you're doing right now. You can't shake it. You can't silence it. You can't ignore it, because when heaven has your name on it, hell itself can't hold you down. Voice grows stronger, exhorting tone. Listen, God didn't call you to sit in the shadows of your fear. He didn't call you to be average. He didn't call you to blend in. When he designed you to stand out, you've been trying to fit into circles that can't contain the size of your destiny. You've been trying to make peace with places God's already told you to leave. You've been settling for safe when God has called you to significance. You keep saying, I'm not ready. But let me tell you something. God never waits for readiness. He creates it in the process. He told Moses, go, before Moses could speak right. He told David, fight, before David was grown. He told Mary, carry, before she ever knew a man. Don't wait to be ready. Just answer the call. Tone slows, powerful close. God is calling you out of fear, calling you out of guilt, calling you out of shame, calling you out of what was into what shall be. He's calling you to rise, to forgive, to build, to believe again. And until you answer, that call will keep ringing in your spirit. It will echo through your disappointments. It will whisper through your tears. It will shout through your silence, because heaven is not through with you yet. Final crescendo, declaration. So today, stop running, stop doubting, stop hiding behind excuses. Lift your hands, lift your heart, lift your head, and say, here I am, Lord. Use me, send me, I am ready. Because when you finally answer that call, the same God who called you will empower you, will equip you, and will establish you for such a time as this. God is calling you. Will you answer? When God calls you, he isn't scanning the earth looking for the flawless, the polished, or the ones who already have everything together. He's not impressed by titles, pedigrees, or the approval of men. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. The kingdom of God has always been built on the backs of broken people who dared to believe that his voice was louder than their limitations. When he calls, he sees beyond what you are into what you can become. He looks at the raw clay of your life and says, I can work with that. He looks at your stammering tongue and says, I can speak through that. He looks at your trembling hands and says, I can heal through that. The very thing that disqualifies you in the eyes of others becomes the platform for his power to be revealed. You see, we spend so much time trying to prove ourselves worthy, trying to earn what God has already decided to give freely. We polish our image, we hide our scars, we bury our insecurities, thinking that God only uses perfect vessels. But God has never used perfection. He's always used surrender. He took a shepherd boy and made him a king. He took a murderer and made him a deliverer. He took a young girl from Nazareth and made her the mother of the Savior. When heaven calls your name, it's not because you've met all the requirements. It's because he has a plan that will shape you along the way. The qualification doesn't come before the call. It comes through the call. Every step of obedience becomes a tool in God's hand to prepare you for the next level. That's why sometimes the journey feels hard, because qualification requires refining. You can't be qualified by comfort. You can't be qualified by ease. God qualifies you in the fire, in the rejection, in the waiting, in the moments when you want to quit. But something inside of you keeps saying, keep going. That's where the qualifying happens, when you push past fear, when you trust God with trembling faith, when you step out of the boat even though the waves are raging. That's where your calling begins to shape you. We often look at the people God used in Scripture and forget how unqualified they were when he found them. Moses had a speech problem. Gideon was hiding from his enemies. Peter was impulsive and inconsistent. Paul was a persecutor of the very faith he would one day preach. Yet in each case, God said, I can use you. He didn't wait until they were ready. He called them, then qualified them through the process. God delights in taking ordinary people and doing extraordinary things through them so that no one can boast in their own strength. The power of God is most visible in weak vessels because his glory fills the cracks. We try so hard to hide. When God calls you, he's not looking for perfection. He's looking for willingness. He can teach you, mold you, train you, and equip you if you'll just say yes. Too many people spend their lives waiting to feel ready before they move. But readiness is a result of movement. You won't discover what's in you until you step into what he's calling you to do. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to obey the one instruction he's given you. It might not make sense. It might not look like what others are doing. But if God is in it, he'll supply everything you need for the journey ahead. Sometimes God will intentionally choose people who seem unqualified so that his grace becomes unmistakable. He'll place a dream in your heart that's bigger than your skill set, because he wants to show you that it's not by might, not by power, but by his Spirit. The call of God stretches you. It pulls you out of your comfort zone. It demands faith where logic fails. It requires you to walk on water when everyone else stays in the boat. The qualifying happens in the walking, not the waiting. You become who you were meant to be as you move in obedience, step by step, trusting that the same God who called you will carry you. The beauty of God's call is that it rewrites your story. It redeems the broken chapters and turns them into testimonies of grace. You might look at your past and see mistakes, but God looks at your past and sees material. Every failure becomes a lesson. Every disappointment becomes direction. Every wound becomes a place where his healing power can flow. The very things that made you feel unworthy are the same things that will make your message authentic. People don't need to see your perfection. They need to see your process. They need to see that God can take someone like you, imperfect, uncertain, flawed, and still use you mightily. So when God calls you, don't shrink back because you think you're not enough. You were never meant to be enough on your own. His strength is made perfect in weakness. The anointing doesn't flow through pride. It flows through dependence. God doesn't need your ability as much as he needs your availability. If you make yourself available, he'll add the ability. If you give him your yes, he'll handle the rest. That's how God works. He takes the least likely and makes them vessels of divine purpose. There's a reason he chose you. There's something about your story, your struggle, your scars that carries a sound heaven wants to release in the earth. You may not have the credentials, the connections, or the confidence, but if you have his call, you have everything you need. The same God who started this work in you will be faithful to complete it. You don't have to strive to qualify yourself in the eyes of people who can't see what God placed inside you. Your worth isn't determined by their approval. It's sealed by his assignment. And when you begin to walk in that calling, you'll find that the things you thought were weaknesses become weapons. The insecurity that once silenced you becomes the humility that makes you teachable. The rejection that once wounded you becomes the empathy that allows you to reach others. The pain that once broke you becomes the passion that fuels your purpose. Every moment of your past has been preparing you for what God is calling you to now. So stop saying you're not qualified. Stop rehearsing your failures and replaying your fears. If God called you, he already factored in your flaws. He knew your weaknesses before he chose you, and he still said, you're the one. What disqualifies you in the world system is what qualifies you in his kingdom. Because when you finally step into what he's called you to do, everyone who sees you will know it wasn't you. It was God working through you. And that's exactly how he gets the glory. Your pain is not punishment. It's preparation. Every tear you've cried, every night you've wrestled with questions, every season you've walked through feeling abandoned and unseen, none of it was wasted. Pain has a purpose in the hands of God. When you are chosen, you will be challenged. When you are anointed, you will be attacked. When you carry destiny, you will go through a process that feels like it's breaking you, but in reality, it's building you. God allows pain not to destroy you, but to develop something within you that comfort never could. The crushing isn't cruelty, it's construction. The pressing isn't punishment, it's preparation for power. Pain is heaven's classroom, and though the lessons are costly, the education is eternal. You don't learn endurance in ease, you learn it in endurance. You don't learn faith when everything is working. You learn faith when nothing makes sense. God uses seasons of pain to strip away false identities, to refine your motives, to deepen your dependence. Sometimes he'll let the thing you thought you couldn't live without fall apart just to show you that he's the one who holds you together. Pain teaches you to pray differently, to see differently, to love differently. It changes how you walk, how you worship, and how you witness. You can't be effective in healing others if you've never been wounded yourself. The oil flows from the place of crushing. The anointing grows in the soil of affliction. That's why some of the most powerful voices don't come from palaces. They come from prisons, from valleys, from broken homes, from lonely seasons. God has a way of turning what the enemy meant for evil into the very thing that equips you for your assignment. He doesn't waste pain, he repurposes it. What looked like a setback becomes setup. What looked like rejection becomes redirection. What looked like loss becomes a labor room for new life. Pain teaches you humility. It strips you of pride and independence. It forces you to look beyond yourself and cling to the one who never leaves. In the fire of affliction, the excess burns away, and what remains is something pure, strong, and unshakable. The reason some people can praise God in the middle of the storm is because they have learned that pain isn't the end of the story. It's a part of the making. God uses pain as the weight room where strength is built. Each trial adds resistance that develops your spiritual muscle. You come out of it with a different kind of authority, a different kind of depth, a different kind of peace. The world teaches us to run from pain, to numb it, to hide it, but God invites us to walk through it with him. He doesn't promise to spare us from the fire. He promises to be in the fire with us. When you walk through the valley, he's not standing on the mountaintop shouting instructions. He's beside you, holding your hand, whispering, keep going, I'm still here. The presence of pain doesn't mean the absence of God. In fact, it's often in the pain that his presence becomes most real. You begin to hear his voice more clearly when every other noise has been stripped away. You begin to see his hand guiding you when every other source fails. Pain also reveals who you are becoming. It exposes what's inside of you. Pressure brings out what's been hidden. When life squeezes you, what comes out reveals your true condition. God allows pain to show you what's in your heart, not to shame you, but to shape you. He wants to show you where faith needs to grow, where forgiveness needs to flow, where trust needs to deepen. Without the refining fire, gold remains untested. Without the pressing, the olive never becomes oil. Without the breaking, the bread never feeds the hungry. Preparation always costs something, and the price is often pain. You may not realize it now, but the very pain you're enduring is equipping you for someone else's breakthrough. The testimony you're forming in tears will be the encouragement someone else needs to survive. when you've walked through the fire and come out not smelling like smoke. You carry proof that God delivers. You become a living letter of hope. That's why the enemy fights you so hard during painful seasons, because he knows the weight of what's being birthed in you. He knows that if you endure this process, you'll walk with a power and authority that can't be faked or taught. You'll have credibility in heaven and on earth because you've been tested and proven. Sometimes God hides your promotion in pain. You think you're losing, but he's pruning. You think he's forgotten, but he's fortifying. Every tear waters the seed of destiny. Every heartbreak plows the soil for a greater harvest. There's a depth of character, compassion, and courage that only grows in seasons of suffering. When you've been through enough pain, you learn not to judge others so quickly. You learn to speak gentler, love deeper, and forgive faster. Pain gives birth to empathy. Empathy gives birth to ministry. Even Jesus, the Son of God, was prepared through pain. He learned obedience through what he suffered. Before the resurrection came the cross. Before the crown came the crushing. If he had to go through Gethsemane, why do we think we'll escape our own? Every crucifixion season in your life is preparing you for a resurrection moment. The cross doesn't mean it's over. It means something glorious is about to rise. God uses the wounds of your past to produce wisdom for your future. Nothing you've endured will go unused in his hands. The pain you're carrying is not evidence of abandonment. It's evidence of assignment. The enemy wouldn't fight what doesn't threaten him. The warfare around your life is a clue to the weight of your calling. The deeper the pain, the higher the purpose. You can't have great anointing without great pressing. You can't have spiritual authority without spiritual adversity. Every season of suffering refines your focus and redefines your faith. You begin to see that comfort never made anyone great. Challenges did. Pain also separates you from shallow people and shallow things. When you've cried real tears, you don't waste time on meaningless conversations. When you've walked through darkness, you value light differently. When you've been broken and restored, you worship differently. Pain changes your appetite. It creates a hunger for truth, authenticity, and depth. It teaches you to lean on God in ways success never could. The lessons learned in the valley are the ones that sustain you on the mountaintop. You may not like the process, but the process is producing something in you that will outlast the pain itself. Patience is being born. Wisdom is being formed. Strength is being developed. The parts of you that could handle pressure are being fortified. Pain makes you pliable in God's hands. It reminds you that you are the clay, not the potter. Every time you break, he's molding you again, shaping you closer to the image of his son. And when he's done, you won't just look different, you'll be different. Your pain has been the hidden hand of God, preparing you for a greater purpose. Every scar carries a story. And every story has the power to set someone else free. The things that once made you cry will one day make you confident. What used to crush you will one day confirm you. The dark nights you thought would never end are actually the backdrop for the dawn that's coming next. Through it all, you're being prepared, refined, and ready for what's been waiting on the other side of this season. You can't fulfill divine purpose while clinging to familiar places. The call of God always requires movement, a willingness to leave behind what's comfortable in order to step into what's destined. Familiarity feels safe, but it can also become a cage. You can't soar into new dimensions while your roots are wrapped around old soil. Every time God calls someone higher, he also calls them away from old habits, old environments, old mindsets, and sometimes old relationships that no longer align with where he's taking you. Destiny always demands departure. You can't stay in yesterday and expect to see tomorrow. Familiarity whispers to you that staying put will keep you secure, but purpose whispers louder that staying put will keep you stuck there. Comes a moment in every person's journey when God disrupts the rhythm of the ordinary and says, come out from among them. It's not because the old place was evil. It's because it's expired. The season that once fed you can no longer sustain you. What once nurtured you can now limit you. Growth always feels like loss at first because leaving the familiar means letting go of what you've known to embrace what you've never seen. Abraham had to leave his father's house before he could see the promise. If he had stayed in Haran, his name would have been lost to history, his story unfinished, his faith untested. The miracle was not in the comfort zone, it was in the journey. God never reveals the full destination. He simply says, go. And it's in the going that we discover who we are and who he is. When you cling to familiar places, you trade transformation for stagnation. You might be safe, but you won't be significant. You might be comfortable, but you won't be called. Familiarity feels like peace, but often it's disguised paralysis. God uses discomfort as a divine alarm clock. When the nest gets too tight, it's a sign that it's time to fly. He stirs the waters of your life, shakes the stability of your surroundings, and removes the props you've been leaning on, because he knows that your future cannot flourish in yesterday's soil. Some of the people who left you weren't betrayers. They were builders of your next season. Some of the doors that closed weren't rejection. They were redirection. When God calls you out, it's not to strip you, it's to stretch you. You can't cling to old thinking while asking God for new blessings. The same mindset that got you here won't take you there. Familiarity has a way of making you addicted to patterns. It convinces you that predictability equals peace. But spiritual growth requires uncertainty, faith, and obedience. Every major move of God in your life will demand that you step into something you can't control. You have to be willing to let go of what you understand in order to grab hold of what you believe. Faith doesn't function in the familiar. It thrives in the unknown. Sometimes the hardest part of walking with God is not the going, it's the leaving. Leaving what you've outgrown, leaving people who once fit but no longer align, leaving the version of yourself that made sense in the last chapter but no longer represents who you're becoming. There's a pain in progress because every elevation requires separation. You can't climb higher while carrying everything from below. Some things must be released before you can be revealed. Familiar places will always tempt you to stay with the words, "At least you know what to expect here." But what you expect there is limitation, not liberation. When God calls you, he rarely calls you to what's easy. The unfamiliar path exposes your dependence, strips away your illusions of control, and brings you face to face with your fate. It's in the stepping out that trust becomes tangible. When Peter stepped out of the boat, it wasn't the water that carried him. It was the word. Familiar places are filled with boats of comfort, but you'll never walk on water while you're still sitting in safety. The miracle is always waiting on the other side of motion. There's a reason why God doesn't let you get too comfortable where you are. Comfort breeds complacency. Familiarity numbs your sensitivity to his voice. Start confusing being settled with being satisfied. But God didn't create you to settle. He created you to stretch. He'll disturb your peace to deliver your purpose. He'll allow a job to end, a friendship to fade, an opportunity to close, not because he's punishing you, but because he's positioning you. When the brook dried up for Elijah, it wasn't a sign of failure, it was a sign of fulfillment. The season had served its purpose, and it was time to move to the next assignment. Clinging to familiar places also means clinging to familiar fears. The longer you stay somewhere out of fear, the more that fear becomes your prison. Familiarity can be disguised as loyalty, but true loyalty is obedience to God's voice, not attachment to a comfort zone. Sometimes you must disappoint people in order not to disappoint your destiny. You can't carry everyone with you, and you can't keep everything that once made you feel safe. The call of God will cost you something. It will cost you your excuses, your comfort, and your old identity. The wilderness between where you were and where you're going is not a punishment. It's a passage. It's the place where God detoxes your spirit from the toxins of the familiar. He'll let you wander just long enough to lose your appetite for Egypt. He'll strip away every crutch until the only thing you can lean on is him. It's in that in-between space that character is formed, faith is refined, and vision becomes clear. Familiarity blinds you to new revelation, but obedience opens your eyes to see what's been waiting on the other side of surrender. If you stay too long in a familiar place, it starts shaping you into something smaller than you were meant to be. Your potential begins to suffocate under the weight of predictability. The same patterns that once protected you begin to imprison you. You start making excuses for staying instead of making moves toward growth. God never designed you to be a monument to the past. He designed you to be a movement toward the future. Every calling requires a crossing, and every crossing requires courage. Sometimes God will remove you from places that feel like home because he's teaching you that home is not a place. It's his presence. The moment you realize that, you stop chasing comfort and start chasing calling. You understand that no matter where he sends you, you're never alone. He goes before you to prepare the way, walks beside you to steady your steps, and follows behind you to protect what's behind. Familiar places can offer safety, but they can't offer destiny. The tension you feel right now, the restlessness in your spirit, that quiet dissatisfaction that won't let you settle, it's not frustration, it's divine agitation. It's God stirring the waters because he knows if he lets you stay too comfortable, you'll never step into what he created you for. He's not punishing you by removing stability. He's provoking you to pursue significance. The familiar can give you control, but only faith can give you fruit. When God calls you out, it's because he's already prepared something greater ahead. The unknown isn't empty, it's inhabited by promise, but you'll never see it if you refuse to move. Familiarity will tell you to play it safe, but purpose will push you to risk it all. And in that tension between fear and faith, obedience becomes the bridge. Each step away from the familiar is a step toward fulfillment. The very thing you're afraid to let go of may be the very thing keeping you from everything you've been praying for. The call of God will persist until you answer it. You can run from it, ignore it, drown it in noise, or bury it under busyness, but it will not stop. The call of God is not like the call of men. It does not fade with time or lose power with distance. It echoes through every season of your life, waiting for your response. You can silence people, but you can't silence purpose. You can hide from others, but you can't hide from the one who made you. His voice has a way of finding you in the darkest corners of your life and reminding you that you were created for more. When God calls you, he speaks not to who you are, but to who you were meant to be. That's why the call feels too big, too heavy, too impossible. Because it's not designed for the version of you that exists right now. It's designed for the version of you that will emerge through obedience. Every time you try to run, that call follows. You might change locations, relationships, or routines, but the call remains constant. It whispers through success and shouts through failure. It visits you in the middle of the night, in the silence of your thoughts, and in the tension of your choices. It doesn't matter how long you've ignored it. God is patient enough to wait until you're ready to hear it again. The persistence of his call is proof of his commitment. He won't stop calling because he refuses to give up on what he placed inside of you. There are people who walked away. Opportunities that slipped through your hands, seasons that broke your heart, but his call still stands. That means your mistakes didn't cancel your mission. The voice of destiny doesn't go mute because of detours. Even when you've taken wrong turns, God reroutes the plan without removing the purpose. The call remains because it's not based on your perfection. It's anchored in his promise. You can sense the call of God even when you don't fully understand it. It begins as a restlessness, a holy discontent that won't let you settle. You might have a good job, a stable life, and the respect of others, yet something inside still whispers, there's more. That whisper is the call. It's not loud, but it's lasting. It won't leave you alone until you move. It's the sound of eternity reminding you that you were made for something greater than temporary comfort. You can try to satisfy it with achievements, possessions, or relationships, but nothing will quiet it except obedience. The call of God often disrupts your plans. It interrupts the timeline you built for yourself. You thought you had it all figured out, and then God starts pulling at your heart in a new direction. That's why many resist it. It doesn't fit neatly into their schedule, but divine timing rarely aligns with human convenience. God doesn't wait for you to feel ready. He calls when he knows it's time. He knows what's ahead of you, and he's preparing you even when you don't realize it. The longer you resist, the heavier the call feels, because what you resist, you prolong. The sooner you surrender, the sooner peace returns. Sometimes the call will chase you into unlikely places. It'll find you in the middle of your distractions, in the company of wrong people, in the pursuit of things that don't satisfy. Jonah tried to flee from God's call, but even the ocean couldn't silence it. The storm was not sent to destroy him. It was sent to direct him. Every storm that shakes your life might be God's way of steering you back to where you belong. You can't outrun what's been ordained. The call of God has a homing device attached to your soul. No matter how far you go, it knows how to find you. For some, the call comes softly over time, building through experiences and inner conviction. For others, it comes suddenly, like lightning breaking through the clouds of confusion. But whether it's gradual or dramatic, it carries the same message. I've chosen you for something greater. And until you respond, life feels incomplete. You can achieve outward success and still feel inwardly restless because you're operating outside of assignment. There's no fulfillment in running from the very thing that gives your existence. Meaning, the call of God doesn't fade. It follows you because it's tied to your identity. The longer you resist the call, the louder the tension becomes. You start feeling out of place in spaces that once satisfied you. Conversations that used to excite you now bore you. Environments that used to feel like home now feel restrictive. That's the call growing louder. It's God's way of pulling you out of what's familiar into what's fruitful. When God is calling, he will disturb your comfort until you move. He'll make it impossible for you to stay small when you were designed to stand tall. The persistence of God's call is not meant to frustrate you. It's meant to free you. It's a reminder that there's something in you that refuses to die because it was birthed by eternity. No matter how deep you bury it under excuses or fear, it will rise again. You'll hear it in moments of silence, in songs, in scriptures, in unexpected conversations. The call of God will speak through circumstances until you realize that ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It only delays your destiny. Every time you say not yet, you're postponing the peace that comes with obedience. Some people think they've missed their moment, that too much time has passed, but purpose doesn't expire. God's call doesn't operate on human deadlines. Moses was called at 80. Abraham was called when he thought his body was too old. The call of God doesn't check your age, your background, or your failures. It checks your heart as long as you're breathing. The call still stands. The same God who called you before your mistakes still calls you after them. The same voice that spoke over your life in your youth is still echoing now, waiting for you to respond. The reason the call won't leave you alone is because it's connected to other lives. Your obedience isn't just about you. It's about everyone who will be blessed through your yes. There are people waiting on the other side of your obedience. Every time you resist the call, you delay someone else's breakthrough. Your voice, your gifts, your story, they are all instruments in the hands of God meant to touch lives you haven't even met yet. That's why he keeps calling. He's not just after your comfort, he's after your impact. Ignoring the call of God might give temporary relief, but it leaves permanent emptiness. You can succeed in every earthly pursuit and still feel unfulfilled because success outside of purpose is failure in disguise. The call is what gives life meaning. It's what turns pain into testimony, mistakes into ministry, chaos into clarity. The call is not an invitation to perfection, but to partnership with the one who knows your potential. You can keep running, but eventually you'll discover that the only true peace comes when you surrender. The call of God is relentless because his love is relentless. He doesn't call you to expose you. He calls you to empower you. He's not trying to take something from you. He's trying to awaken something in you. Every moment of resistance only reveals how deeply he desires to see you walk in purpose. The persistence of his call is a testament to his faithfulness. Even when you were far from him, his voice was near. Even when you forgot him, he remembered you. That's why the call won't stop until you answer. It's not just a command, it's a pursuit born out of love. When you step into your calling, heaven supplies what you lack. God never gives a vision without provision. The moment you say yes to what he's asked of you, resources begin to align, doors begin to open, strength begins to rise, and grace begins to flow. You may not see it all at once, but as you move forward in obedience, everything you need begins to manifest at the right time. Heaven doesn't respond to hesitation. It responds to faith. The supply of heaven is motion activated. It starts flowing when you start moving. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to trust that the God who called you already factored in your weakness, your fears, your inexperience, and your limitations. When God places a calling on your life, he's already accounted for every deficiency you think disqualifies you. What you lack in experience, he covers with grace. What you lack in connections, he replaces with favor. What you lack in resources, he fills with provision. Heaven never expects you to complete a divine assignment with human strength alone. God calls you into things that are too big for you so that you will depend entirely on him. If you could do it on your own, it wouldn't be destiny. It would just be another project. But when it's divine, it demands partnership with heaven. That's why you feel stretched, overwhelmed, and unqualified. Because what's in front of you isn't meant to be managed. It's meant to be manifested through his power working in you. The moment you step out, heaven starts to back you. Angels are dispatched. Doors you didn't knock on begin to open. And people you've never met are stirred to help you. God orchestrates divine connections in places you haven't even reached yet. While you're worrying about how it will happen, heaven is already arranging how it will come together. Your obedience activates the supernatural. That's why fear always attacks right before a major step, because the enemy knows that if you ever truly step into your calling, the resources of heaven will be unleashed in your direction. Stepping into your calling doesn't mean you won't feel inadequate. It means you choose to move forward in spite of it. You'll never feel fully ready, but readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. The moment you decide to go, grace goes with you. Every time you take a step, strength rises to meet it. God's supply doesn't show up in advance, it meets you in motion. When the Israelites stepped into the Red Sea, the water didn't part while they stood on the shore. It parted when their feet touched it. That's how heaven operates. The miracle waits on movement. Provision follows obedience. When you step into your calling, God begins to teach you that dependence is not weakness, it's the pathway to power. He allows moments of lack to reveal the sufficiency of his supply. When you reach the end of your ability, that's where his ability begins. You learn that his grace truly is sufficient and his strength is made perfect in weakness. The gaps in your plan become the spaces where his glory fills in. The areas where you fall short become testimonies of how his spirit empowers you. Every time you say, I can't, he whispers, I can through you. Heaven's supply isn't just about material provision. It's about wisdom, timing, favor, courage, and creativity. God equips you mentally, spiritually, and emotionally for what he's called you to do. You may walk into situations that feel beyond your capacity, but in those moments, divine insight flows. You'll find yourself saying things you never prepared, solving problems you never studied for, and handling challenges that used to terrify you. That's what it looks like when heaven supplies. It's not always something you can see. It's something you experience from the inside out. When God calls, he doesn't just anoint you for the task. He surrounds you with the right people. Some of them you'll meet along the way, and they'll carry what you don't have. You'll bring the vision. They'll bring the skills. You'll carry the word. They'll carry the resources. God never intended you to fulfill purpose in isolation. That's why he plants people in your path who complement your calling. The supply of heaven often comes wrapped in relationships. Divine partnerships are part of divine provision. When you step into your calling, God aligns you with others who are running in the same direction. And together, you accomplish what none of you could do alone. Fear tells you that stepping out means stepping into emptiness, but faith knows that stepping out means stepping into abundance. God has already placed everything you need in the path of your obedience. You'll find it when you move. That's why the first step is always the hardest. The enemy wants you frozen in doubt because he knows that once you move, momentum is on your side. The hardest step is the first one out of fear. After that, heaven carries you. You stop striving and start flowing. You stop forcing and start following. You stop panicking about what you don't have and start trusting the one who never runs out. There's a rhythm in walking with God. He calls, you move, he provides. It's a divine cycle that builds your faith. Each step reveals a new layer of his faithfulness. Every time you obey, your capacity grows. You begin to realize that the power wasn't in what you had. It was in who sent you. You weren't waiting on resources. Resources were waiting on your obedience. Every calling comes prepackaged with everything required to complete it, but you only discover it in motion. Heaven never releases its supply to the idle. It releases it to the obedient. The reason so many people feel drained and unfulfilled is because they trying to sustain themselves in something God never called them to. Provision flows where purpose is. When you're walking in your own plans, you have to fund them yourself. But when you walk in God's plan, heaven picks up the bill. That doesn't mean there won't be challenges, but it does mean that everything necessary for your mission will arrive when you need it. Sometimes God waits until the very last moment to provide, not to test your patience, but to teach you trust. He wants you to know that his timing is not late. It's layered with purpose. When you step into your calling, there's also a shift in your identity. You stop seeing yourself through the lens of limitation and start seeing yourself through the lens of assignment. You realize that you were never meant to do it in your strength. The same God who called you also equipped you, and the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. You're not walking alone. Heaven walks with you. Every time you step into your calling, you're walking in partnership with the creator of the universe. That's why you can face what used to frighten you. When you walk in your calling, courage comes not from confidence in yourself, but from confidence in the one who called you. God supplies more than you expect, but rarely in the way you expect. Sometimes the provision comes disguised as a problem, a delay, or a detour. The closed door you're frustrated about might be protecting you from unnecessary distraction. The no you received may have been heaven's way of saying, not yet. The waiting season is not wasted. It's where the unseen resources are being prepared. The supply of heaven is strategic. It arrives in sync with divine timing. When you look back, you'll realize that every time you thought you were running out, you were actually being refilled. Stepping into your calling doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes possible. Heaven never promised the absence of opposition, but it guarantees the presence of provision. Every battle comes with the necessary armor. Every test comes with the grace to pass it. Every burden comes with the strength to bear it. When you step into what God has called you to, you begin to live with a sense of divine assistance. You're not carrying the weight of destiny alone. Heaven is carrying it with you. When you walk in purpose, things begin to align in ways you couldn't manufacture. Favor meets you in rooms your resume couldn't get you into. Wisdom comes when you least expect it. Peace shows up in places that used to bring anxiety. That's what happens when heaven supplies. You realize that calling isn't about your capacity. It's about his commitment. He called you, so he'll keep you. He started the work, so he'll sustain it. You simply have to take the step and trust that every resource required for your assignment will meet you in the journey. Thank you.